Okay, let's dig into this stack of sources we've got. We're diving into a really interesting corner of a future time and place you might recognize.
Yeah, it's a setting where, individuals are really grappling with some intense personal stuff.
Right, and all against this backdrop of pretty major institutional changes and challenges.
Exactly. And this material, it gives us a really close look at how people handle those moments when their, let's say, personal well-being and choices just collide head-on with bigger forces.
Bigger forces like what? Security issues, authority questions.
That kind of thing, yeah. Security concerns, authority, navigating really complex relationships, and just dealing with deep emotions or things from their past.
So our mission in this deep dive is basically to pull out the core insights from these documents. What are the surprising facts, the relatable struggles hiding in here?
Think of it as a shortcut, maybe, to understanding this complex landscape
Hmm.
and what it tells us about the characters and, their world.
Okay, so where do we start? It looks like the sources kick off with someone going through a pretty fundamental change. Data.
That's right. We see him in counseling with Counselor Troi. He's trying to process everything through uh, the lens of his new emotion chip.
But it's not going smoothly.
No, not at all. He's hitting a wall, it seems, especially when it comes to looking back at old memories with these new feelings.
And the core of that struggle, reading this, seems to be grief,
Hmm.
specifically about his daughter Lal.
Yeah, exactly. Her death happened years ago, but now that he can feel it's hitting him. For the first time, really.
And his logical side just can't compute. Like, why now? Why grieve something that happened so long ago?
Precisely. It's that classic conflict within him, isn't it? The old programming versus this new emotional reality.
Mm-hmm.
But the sources show a breakthrough is possible. Troi guides him, helps him see that grief isn't about logic or timing.
It's just natural when you have emotions and you've lost someone.
Right. It's part of processing loss. And interestingly, exploring that doesn't just bring up the pain.
No, the material mentions he also finds positive memories.
Yeah, like the love he felt for Lal, the moment she called him father, realizing she loved him back. That seems really crucial for him.
It sort of validates the feelings he's having now, makes them real.
Yeah. But the focus on emotions doesn't actually stop with data. Almost right after this session, Troi gets a message.
Oh, and it throws her into a crisis.
A major one, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just some random call. It's from Worf.
Okay.
And he brings some pretty shocking news about her mother, Lwaxana. Something about events from the past year, while Lwaxana was apparently married and living on Tavni.
Wow. Okay. So Troi was completely out of the loop.
Totally. And the sources really show her react. You see the agitation, the frustration of being kept in the dark,
Yeah.
and this deep, immediate worry for her mother.
So it just pulls her right out of her own stuff and into Laxana's world.
Instantly, yeah.
So while all this personal drama is happening, the background context the sources provide, it sounds like the galaxy itself is pretty tense, Starfleet especially.
Oh, definitely. The material points back to something called the Leighton Affair. Remember that?
Vaguely, yeah. Some big conspiracy.
Huge. Shook Starfleet to its core, apparently shattered a lot of trust, led to high-level resignations, a big push to restore integrity.
But left everyone feeling kind of paranoid looking over their shoulders.
Exactly that. And that whole climate leads Captain Picard to this summit at Starbase 19, called by the new Admiral Hayes to talk about ongoing threats.
And he gets a security briefing there from a Lieutenant Daniels, which sounds, well, interesting is one word for it.
It is. Daniels goes through this very methodical list, Ferengi, Orion Syndic, the usual suspects. But what the sources really highlight and what Picard jumps on immediately is who isn't on that list, who isn't named directly.
Let me guess. The Borg.
Bingo. Daniels kind of dances around it.
Yeah.
And Picard, being Picard, calls him out, tells him his job is to protect the ship, not, quote, his psyche.
Oof. Direct. But it shows how even at the top levels, past trauma is still shaping how they deal with present dangers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this whole climate, this heightened security, almost paranoia, it has very real, very personal effects almost immediately. When they arrive at the starbase?
Yeah, you feel it straight away. The sources describe these like really invasive security scans for everyone beaming in. Just pervasive suspicion.
But it gets specific for Geordi. Admiral Hayes has a directive just for him.
He does. Hayes tells him he has to have surgery. Replace his visor with ocular implants.
Has to. Why?
The official reason given is security. Past incidents where the visor was compromised. Used against them.
Okay, so there's a logic there, but
Yeah.
how does Geordi take it?
Not well, not quietly anyway. He feels singled out, like all his years of service, his contributions, they just don't matter against the security mandate.
And this pressure builds up.
Yeah, the sources even mention an outburst. Really uncharacteristic for Geordi, apparently. Publicly, in engineering, just shows how much it's getting under his skin.
So Data tries to help him, presumably,
Yeah.
as his friend. He does. But initially, Data approaches it, well, logically, thinking about Hayes' security argument.
But that misses the point for Geordi.
It seems so. Data struggles, initially, to grasp the sort of emotional core of Geordi's resistance. It's not just about the logic of the security risk.
And the pressure from Hayes isn't just a suggestion, is it?
Not at all. It's explicit. Hayes gives Geordi this list of really undesirable shore duty assignments. The implication is crystal clear. Refuse the surgery and say goodbye to starship duty. Your career path changes drastically.
Wow, that's basically coercion. It puts Geordi's whole life's ambition on the line.
Right. And this is where Data, maybe drawing on his own recent experiences with Troi's and emotions, starts to shift his approach.
How so?
He starts searching his own memory banks, looking for analogous situations, times he felt treated as less than, had his autonomy questioned.
Like being switched off like a machine, or denied parenthood. The whole sentience debate.
Exactly those things. And that internal search leads him to make a really surprising suggestion to Geordi. Almost radical, you could say.
Which is?
Resign from Starfleet.
Resign. Whoa.
Yeah, Data sees it as maybe the only logical way left for Geordi to assert his right to choose. To make a stand, reclaim his agency.
That's huge, especially for someone like Geordi where Starfleet is everything. You can almost feel the conflict that must create for him in the sources.
Absolutely. It's a massive internal struggle.
Okay, so while Geordi's wrestling with that, back on Betas's, Troi's situation with her mother is escalating.
It is, because Lwaxana is just doubling down on denial. About Tavni, about what happened. She's even claiming she hasn't moved out of her home there, which Troi knows isn't true.
And then someone else shows up, Ambassador Dyson.
Right, from Tavni.
Nah.
And he's there to demand Lwaxana and the child, based on Tavnian law.
What grounds?
Specific customs about male children.
Hmm.
And he makes this chilling argument that letting the child be raised solely by women would cause, quote, grievous effects.
That's archaic. How does Lwaxana react?
Oh, classic Lwaxana. Bold as brass. Asserts her betazoid lineage, her status, and then drops a bombshell. She claims she's married to Odo.
Married to Odo, seriously?
Apparently. And she even uses Mr. Hom's, imposing presence to kind of intimidate Dason.
Okay, but why Odo? Why not call Picard or someone in Starfleet?
Well, the sources indicate Lwaxana explains this later. Her thinking is that Odo has this strong personal sense of justice that operates kind of outside specific legal systems.
Whereas Starfleet?
Starfleet is bound by treaties, by things like the Prime Directive, or, well, the primary direction seems to be the term used here, to respect foreign laws and authorities. Even if they disagree with them, Odo offers a different kind of recourse.
I see. That makes a certain kind of sense. But the situation gets even more complicated, doesn't it?
Oh, incredibly so. Right in the middle of this whole confrontation with Dason, Lwaxana goes into labor.
Right there. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And Deanna, because of the empathic link,
Yeah.
she feels her mother's pain intensely.
Which must just solidify her resolve.
Completely. You see her determination just harden.
Yeah.
She will protect her mother and the baby, no matter the cost.
But Dason doesn't back down, even with her in labor.
No, he keeps insisting, clinging to this bizarre, offensive idea that the child is being irreparably harmed just by being around women.
That's unbelievable, and that's when Deanna acts.
Yes, it's a pivotal moment described in the sources. Faced with his stubbornness, her mother's agony, she makes a very sudden, very physical choice.
What does she do?
She grabs a medical laser scalpel, confronts Dason directly, and uses it to inflict these painful, cauterizing cuts on his hands.
Whoa, Deanna, that's intense.
Incredibly, her stance is just pure defiance, rejecting his authority, putting family first, even when he's screaming threats about her career like, I will have your uniform.
And then Odo shows up, just in time.
Perfect timing, called by Mr. Hom. And the sources show him very calmly confirming, yes, he is married to Lwaxana.
So she wasn't bluffing.
Apparently not.
Oh.
And crucially, he produces some kind of official Bajoran legal document.
Okay.
And that document completely demolishes Dyson's claim under Tavnian law. It just shuts the whole argument down. Ambassador's got nowhere to go.
Effective. And how does Deanna react to Odo in this moment? Still wary.
Well, what's really striking, according to the sources, is that Deanna observes him closely. And despite his usually unreadable changeling face, she sees something in his eyes.
What? Yeah.
genuine concern, and maybe affection for the baby, for Lwaxana. And that seems to start melting away her initial suspicion of him.
So it sets up a new kind of dynamic between them.
Looks like it. Things calm down a bit, and Odo agrees to wait with Deanna to talk.
Hmm.
And she specifically says she needs to talk with father.
Interesting. Okay, so Lwaxana's immediate crisis ends with the baby's birth. A boy.
A son, yes, named Baron, which means little one. A name that connects him both to his Tavnian father's heritage, it seems, and also a Betazoid family tradition linked to Deanna's sister, Kestra, who died.
That's poignant. And does Lwaxana open up to Deanna afterwards?
She does. There are some incredibly honest moments described. Lwaxana apologizes for shutting Deanna out, admits she felt shame about things in her past.
Shame. About what?
Perceived failures, maybe?
Uh-huh.
The sources suggest she even acknowledges trying to make Deanna feel bad about being unmarried, sort of projecting her own issues.
Wow.
But ultimately, she expresses real pride in Deanna,
Yeah.
in her strength, her independence. It sounds like a really powerful moment of healing between them.
That's good to hear. Okay, let's swing back to Geordi's situation. How does that resolve? Does he resign? Does he get the surgery?
Well, he has a really important conversation with Dr. Crusher first, and the sources highlight this. Crusher basically gives him an out.
How?
Ethically. She refuses to perform the surgery if it's coerced, if he doesn't truly consent. That refusal changes everything.
Well, it takes the pressure off, gives him actual space to choose.
Exactly. And that seems to trigger a kind of epiphany for Geordi.
Yeah.
He realizes how much he's been driven by external validation, by past hurts, by proving something to them.
Them. Like the critics, the doubters, the institution itself.
Yeah, all those voices. And with Crusher backing him, ensuring it has to be his choice, he asks himself, what do I want? What does he decide?
Fascinatingly, he decides to go ahead with the surgery.
He does. But why?
Because this time, the sources present it very clearly. It's his choice. Made on his terms. He even starts asking Crusher detailed technical questions about the implants. He's approaching it from a place of agency now, not pressure.
Okay, so he finds his own way through it.
Yeah.
How does Data react when he finds out?
Data visits him later. He's relieved, naturally, but also apologetic.
Apologetic? For what?
For his earlier advice to resign. He recognizes now it was logically sound in a way, but maybe emotionally driven and flawed in its understanding of Geordi's connection to Starfleet.
Ah, I see.
And Data's still clearly grappling with his own emotional control. The sources mention he's even thinking about creating a circuit to temporarily turn off his emotions.
Seriously, turn them off. Yeah, it's a controversial idea, obviously.
Yeah.
And Geordi's response is described as pretty cautious, understandably.
Yeah, that seems problematic. Okay, so Geordi makes his choice. Does that end the matter with the higher-ups? With Hayes?
Not quite. Captain Picard steps in. The sources describe him lodging a formal protest with Admiral Hayes about how the whole situation with Geordi was handled. Calls it coercion.
Good for Picard. How does Hayes respond to that? Does he back down?
He defends his actions. He shares this personal story, actually, about his own granddaughter getting stopped by some overeager kid during the security crackdown after the Leighton affair.
Trying to justify the paranoia?
Sort of. Acknowledging the difficult balance, maybe, between security responsibility and preserving liberty in these tense times. He admits they share concerns, but basically emphasizes that commanders have to make hard choices. He stands firm, resolute.
So no easy answers there either.
Not at all. And the sources really leave you with that feeling. These immediate conflicts find resolutions. The baby's born, Geordi makes his decision, the protest is made, but the underlying tensions, they're still there.
Yeah, the clash between individual rights and institutional demands, the whole struggle with emotional well-being and making authentic choices, navigating family versus external systems, it all feels very ongoing.
It's a complex picture, definitely, but it's a powerful look at how these, universal dilemmas play out, even in a future setting.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, we've really traced these threads of deeply personal, emotional journeys right alongside family crises, bumping up against rigid laws, and that constant pressure from institutional security needs impacting individual lives.
Yeah, and what strikes me is how these characters, despite being in space, dealing with aliens and advanced tech, are facing challenges that feel very human, very relatable.
And it makes you think, doesn't it? How do these dilemmas resonate in our own lives right now? How do we find that balance between, say, security and freedom, societally, but also personally?
And how do we make sure our choices are genuinely our own, free from that undue pressure, whether it's from external authorities or just our own past baggage.
Maybe the final thought to leave you with, drawing from Geordi's struggle especially, is this.
Consider how much of what you think you must do is influenced by them.
Right. Whether them means past critics or what society expects or people you see as being in charge. And then think about what might open up, what possibilities emerge when you shift the focus entirely to what do I want
Yeah.
on your own terms.